you can be biased in terms of the content that you're creating or the video that just got edited, and you're like, wow, this is going to perform amazing. And we've had this time and time again with my content, with our clients' contents, where we're reviewing the video and we're like, this video is going to slap out of the park. It's very similar with direct ads on Facebook ads and Instagram ads. We get an ad extremely dialed in, spent a ton on production and get all dialed in, and then a video that we spent 10 times less time performs better.
Thank you so much for tuning into Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. I'm your host, as always, Christian D. Evans, and this next guest is the unstoppable force behind HighKey Enterprises. As the CEO and PR extraordinaire, he guarantees world-class results in the ever-dazzling world of modern-day personal brand expertise. With HighKey Clout and HighKey Agency under his wing, he's all about propelling top-notch entrepreneurs, top 1%, and businesses to digital stardom through genius social media growth campaigns and tier 1 media coverage. That's what we're going to be talking about and unpacking today. From captivating features in national publications to dominating Google searches, they are building world-class brands for some of the biggest influencers. Please welcome my next guest, the one and only Luke Lintz. How you doing?
Christian, thanks for having me on. That was an amazing intro. That I could have said it better myself.
Man, I'm looking forward to this conversation because one of the things I'm always passionate about is, brand. And you guys just dominate in this space. You were talking offline how successful your business is and what you're looking at in the next 3 to 5 years and where it's growing. And it's just because the demand. A lot of people think about it. They want to figure this out. I want to ask you, you've worked with mainly the top 1%, right? Some people that already have established businesses and brands, but they want to just take it to the next level. So what I love about this conversation we're going to have today is we're not going to talk about basic stuff, okay? For those that are listening, go find some other stuff. That's basic. We're going to dive into Luke's content and talk higher concepts, right? So these people, they already got some brand established. They want to take it to the next level. Luke, I want to ask you, okay, kind of start out 30,000 foot view with the top 1% of these individuals, right? What are you noticing? There's probably a pattern that these individuals are misstepping in regards to maybe content creation, maybe just social media engagement, maybe just the funnel process. They just don't have a specific strategy. What are you noticing in regards to some of the patterns that you're seeing in some of these brands and personal brands that you're working with?
Dude, I love this question. I love getting into higher level topics because quite frankly, I've been on over 100 podcasts and I've never once got into higher level conversation because most people's audiences are from like the foundation up and in the starting phases. So I'm looking forward to this. In terms of the question of where the biggest flaws that we see, especially when we're speaking with clients, is the biggest flaw that I see and the mistake that people make with their brands and social media in general is they don't have a strategy going into it. And the reason is because of a lack of information and a lack of understanding about social media in general. And it's kind of like going into where there's a lot of similarities between social media and your social media presence and running a business. And so it's kind of like going into a business and starting up a business without a plan. And if you go into business and you're going into it without a plan, you're doomed to fail. And if you don't consistently reiterate that plan based off of the ever-changing markets and your industry, then you're going to continue to fail. And so what happens is that people put social media on the back burner until they realize that they need to have it. And then they start just going into social media, whether it be a particular platform or just starting to film content randomly with no strategy at all. And then they don't see any traction and it's demotivating for them. And so that's a kind of the reoccurring theme that we see where people eventually get to a point where they understand that they need to have social media to take their business to the next level and to need to be having a presence on one of the social media platforms, but then they don't know really which social media platform they should be focusing on and the strategy they should be putting in place for that particular social media platform.
Oh, 100%. And one of the reasons why I love diving into kind of the way you think about this is because you already work with, top 1% of business owners and personal brands. And the reason why I keep reiterating that is because, like I mentioned, they already have something established. But the reason why they come to you, Luke, is because for some reason it's not working, right? Maybe we've all heard repurpose content and now leveraging AI and you can repurpose a lot easier. But like you just mentioned, it's just not as easy as just repurposing it. You have to have a very strategic, tactical way of leveraging each one of these verticals, which is i.e. social media platforms, and saying, what is our funnel process? What is our acquisition? Why are we doing this? Now, I want to dive into this. Okay. I think one of the best questions I could ask you, Luke, is maybe give us an example of a influencer or a client of yours. You don't have to share the name, the business, all that stuff, but maybe what their problem was, what their situation was, and how you guys were able to unpack that for them and build out a tactical plan. I'd love for you to unpack that case study, if you will.
Dude, perfect. Yeah. I won't mention any names just for like client confidentiality purposes, but I could go over like a general circumstance basically where it's practically the exact same how clients come into us, especially clients that we take on for social media. And this is the scenario. And probably if you're listening to this and you're a high level individual, you're probably somewhere around this bucket. And so it's somebody who's coming in and they have a substantial business. So they have the foundations already in place. They've made money through one successful pipeline. And so at least one successful pipeline. So that could have been word of mouth that got them to 7 figures plus. That could have been direct advertising where they mastered a specific direct advertisement with maybe Facebook ads and it got them to 7 figures plus. Or yeah, usually one of those two, or like they're an in-person business where it's like very physical real estate, and they've gone to where they haven't needed that digital presence in order to get them up to that 7 plus. And so they've come to a time of wanting to scale. A lot of people are wanting to basically potentially get into speaking arrangements or a lot of these avenues where you need to have some sort of digital presence in order to get to that next level. And so what we do is, like I was saying, where our starting point is constructing the exact plan of getting there. So before taking on any single social media client, we actually have a month-long plan that's kind of a consultation program to reverse engineer where they're trying to get to. So we start asking questions that people have never answered specifically about their social media, but they always answer for their business side of things. And usually what those questions are is it's around their brand foundation in terms of, first, like, what's their client avatar? What audience are they trying to like actually outreach to? What's their specific audience? What knowledge do they have the most expertise in? Because that's one of the biggest components in terms of how you're going to create content, in terms around the knowledge that you have, and then wrapping that into what your audience actually wants to listen to. And so it's really about breaking down that foundation in terms of what's matching up with the knowledge that they have and the most industry specific knowledge that they have, the audience that they're looking to get to, and then also how they're trying to monetize from it. Because the majority of people don't go into social media to make zero money. And there's usually like some type of thing that they're trying to get from it in the long run, whether that's speaking engagements, more clients, more book calls, whatever that is. And so what we do is we take all of that information between that we get in that initial consultation, and we try and match it all up together in terms of the content that they're going to be putting out. And like the problem that we see is a lot of clients that come to us are trying to become famous on social media. And it's not necessarily about that, where you're going too broad, and it can actually be way more beneficial to be going extremely niche and showcasing your very niche knowledge and industry expertise to a smaller audience, which could be astronomically more valuable if you're giving very industry specific information. And instead of diluting the information and knowledge that you have to try and go for a broader audience, and then you're diluting the content that you have. And there's so much content that goes out on a daily basis across millions of posts across every single social media platform. And so in order to cut through that noise, especially when you're just getting started with 0 followers and zero subscribers, is you have to be giving away unbelievable amounts of value in very high level content.
Well, you said so much stuff there, which is really, really valuable stuff. And I want to, double click on a few things here. But before, I want to share a friend of mine. I've got numerous friends that are in the investment world, and I see this all the time. Where and I'm so glad you kind of dive into this, Luke, because most of them are just getting on podcast or creating content. Or I've got this one family office friend that has got about 10,000 YouTube videos. But I asked him, what is your thesis with that? 10,000, subscribers on YouTube, et cetera. And they get a lot of watch hours, a lot of views, whatever. But their ultimate goal is to get clients, and they only get maybe one or two from that. And it's like, well, definitely with the content you have, you should be able to get that higher caliber. Like, who are you looking for? Like you just mentioned, who's your avatar, blah, 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 et cetera, and working reverse engineering. And I think sometimes people go into it thinking, oh, I need a million, 2 million followers, et cetera. When the reality is getting more niche specific, it may not be about the amount of subscribers or just the way you look at it. It may not be about views, but it's about, hey, is this hitting the kind of person that I'm looking for that's easily going to convert into a customer, if that's your goal, if that's your strategy. Because otherwise, it's not about, being an Alex Hormozy with 2 million, 3 million subs or Dave Ramsey or whatever, but it's about identifying and saying, hey, I'm fine with 5,000 subs or whatever, and have a smaller presence, but guess what? I'm talking directly to my audience. And that's the way to think about it. And instead of just kind of this quantity game almost, because I think a lot of people, they listen to Gary Vee and it's like, okay, we just got to create content and repurpose it and just push it out and just hope for the best. Is that what you're noticing as well? And then when you're working with these individuals, let's double click on like what questions you're asking for. Like you mentioned, a lot of these individuals, they have a very clear strategic plan with their business, where their growth, their rocks, their KPIs, their metrics, where their team is going to move the needle further, but they have because this is a new game. A lot of them aren't familiar with this whole strategy. So unpack that a little bit for us, my man.
Yeah, dude, there's a lot there. So one component of things, another component that I see people flaw in, on top of not knowing the direction that they're trying to get to and then reverse engineering back on the social media side of things, is you see people finally understanding that social media is a game that they need to be playing for their personal brand and business. And then they start doing what you said in terms of getting on podcasts and getting on all of these things and end up just filming and repurposing that content for social media. But what we have to understand is that with millions of pieces of content going on social media, sure, you can have the repurposed content from long form and podcasts as a component of your social media strategy, but it can't be the focal point. The focal point has to be you creating dedicated short form content to the majority of short form content platforms. The majority of people don't want to watch videos that are cut up of you on a podcast. I'm filming this, we're filming this and recording this, and this is going to get broken down into a podcast. This can be a component of your content strategy, but the majority of your content needs to be dedicated, focused content around what your industry specific knowledge is. And it's because the most important part of the videos are the hook of the video, which is the first 1 to 2 seconds majority on short form clips. And so you have to nail down that hook unbelievably. It has to be very enticing. And then you have to be giving knowledge based off of that hook. And then you have to have a call to action to make sure that they're following or engaging with that particular piece of content. And you usually can't do that from a cut up piece of content from a podcast. You can't nail the major 3 points of every single video. And so it can be a component of there to be adding extra value and to have more content be going out. But the majority of the content that's going to be heavy hitters is the stuff that's dedicated to the camera. And then where people fall short of that is that they don't have a team in place for that. Usually big business owners, and it's hilarious, and people can probably resonate this if they're listening to this, is they get their assistant to take over their social media strategy, or they get their admin all the time. We work with tons of cosmetic surgery practices, and they're currently getting their front desk lady to be working on their social media presence. And it's just crazy to think about, because what ends up happening is the business owner starts being the manager of that one person who's managing their social media presence. And that one person the one person who's managing the social media presence, it's limited to their knowledge base of every single social media platform, which isn't possible. Like, the reason our agency works is because we have a team who lives and breathes social media. We have a video editing team that lives and breathes on social media, figuring out what captures people's attention the most. And then we're able to use all of that knowledge base for all of our clients that we manage.
And you're exactly right, where you're very strategic, very tactical in the way you think about it, but asking these unpacked questions to help them understand, okay, hey, but also, we all hire, definitely these business owners that you work with, they hire CFOs, they will hire, C-suite level individuals to manage a team, to manage their sales team, whatever. But you got to have that same high caliber person that knows what they're doing in regards to strategy and social media. Now, I want to ask you this a little bit also. I was talking to another friend of mine, and I loved his strategy where he creates buckets almost of content. Hey, this is just engagement or entertainment purposes. There's no value at all associated. This one over here is to share my story or testimonials. This one's over here is case studies, for content. And this one over here is education. And then this is over here is like education plus entertainment, if you will. So I found that very interesting where he was able to articulate and identify these buckets of content. So it wasn't just one stream of things. Now he was in the e-com space, so that made sense a little bit in regards to like maybe product like, review and et cetera, et cetera. But also this is very similar to professional services. Do you find that's also the same way? Because I do know some professional services, they don't want to integrate too much of their own story, their own path, but they just want to say, hey, how to XYZ, okay, here, and I can, explain it or educate them in that manner. How do you tactfully approach that with those buckets?
Yeah. So with this question, there's a difference that the audience needs to understand between personal brands and business brands. And so personal brands, the reason they're actually extremely more valuable than building your business brand digitally is because those followers and that engagement that you build up on your personal brand can translate into any business that you do for the rest of your time. And you really only have one personal brand. That's why it's so important to make sure that it's unbelievable. And the reason why personal brand is so powerful is because you're able to have all of these touch points with a potential follower or somebody who's engaging with your content. Like you said, in terms of this person who has all of these buckets, because those buckets of different types of content are basically his hobbies or like different connection points that he has with his audience. And so that's what we do with personal brands that we manage is we figure out not just like the business topics that they're industry specific knowledgeable about, but also the adding in components of their content in terms of what make up their entire life. And it doesn't have to be covering every single aspect of the person's life. Like, for example, Gary Vee never talks about his family on social media because that's like kind of off limits for him. He doesn't want to showcase that publicly. But he talks about his garage sailing, talks about his business. He talks about all of these other things, talks about how he's a huge Jets fan, all of those things where those are connection points with your potential audience. Now, a business doesn't normally have that. And so what we do with our business clients that we manage their social media and digital presence is it's more to not necessarily grow a huge following with a business account. It's more to build immediate trust and rapport with new people and new leads that are coming in from other avenues. So what I mean by that is, for example, if you don't have a social media presence for your business and somebody is coming to you to search you up on Google or search you on these social media accounts and they can't find you, huge red flag. The other option is if they search you up on Google and your business on social media and very little comes up or posts come up that lower your credibility level in terms of like, it's not a nice Instagram page that they see. It's not a nice LinkedIn page that they see, lowers your credibility. Now, so that's why for business brands that we manage, we try and get them up to a level where all of their social media presence and all of their Google presence looks like a landing page, where it's to increase that credibility and increase that conversion rate, not necessarily to scale a massive amount of followers.
I'm a big believer in that where it was interesting because we were streamlining this and I found this so interesting the way you approach that. Let me ask you just this real quick also. Do you feel like it's a quantity game or is it a quality game in regards to content? Or is it kind of both a little bit?
Right now, for sure, it's a quality game. I would much rather have a client post 15 posts per month that are super quality and heavy hitters than spending time doing 45 pieces of content. And this is a component of what we do with our clients where it's much more in terms of paying just for like the knowledge. When you're paying an agency, it doesn't have to be ours. It's like any social media agency. Like I would assume most social media agencies have some stuff like that's good practices. But what we do, for example, is we know our clients have limited amount of time, but know that social media is right for them. And so with the understanding that you have to be creating dedicated content for short form platforms, and can't just be cutting up like podcasts or can't be just cutting up you having team meetings. You have to be sitting down and doing dedicated content. We script out about 15 to 30 videos for our clients fully based off of the pre-interviews that we've done with them and the things that they want to talk about, with all of the components into play, the hook, the value, the call to action, all of those components, 30 videos scripted out. And we hire a videographer to go to their office or go to their personal house, wherever it's a nice background. And we crank out 30 pieces of content in the matter of a 4 to 6 hour period. And most business owners, we only work with business owners that are at the caliber that they have that industry knowledge, 7 figures plus, but also are really good at speaking. And so normally, if you're really good at speaking, you can crank out that content if you have scripts in front of you. And so it just makes it so much easier where you are basically doing 1 to 2 film sessions a month, and then you're able to post daily content across all social media platforms.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I definitely understand the batch content and so forth and the strategy. I want to get a little bit micro because what's interesting to me is I didn't realize how important not only the hook, because I remember I would watch stuff on YouTube and the thumbnail would not even be relative to what they actually discuss in the actual YouTube video. So, but I do understand why they establish a headline or a hook that's sexy, that's attractive, that it grabs your attention and it demands your attention basically so that you want to click on it and review it. But then later on when I look at it, it's like, oh, they didn't even discuss that at all, so I found that very interesting, obviously. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because you do want to make sure that there's an alignment in regards to, correct me if I'm wrong, in regards to the thumbnail, the headline, and also the actual content that is presented in the video or the piece of video that you establish, correct?
100%. Yeah, you need to have the alignment there in order, like if you don't have alignment there, sure, you could have a lot of viewership on that particular video, but it won't translate to followers. People will feel like they had a bait and switch on them. And yeah, if we want to go like really micro, we can talk about every single social media platform, like YouTube, for example. YouTube Shorts, they don't really have thumbnails right now on their YouTube Shorts because you're not able to add it. Their base level software of YouTube Shorts is very limited, and so the only thing that is a bait for the viewer for YouTube Shorts is the headline at the bottom. And so you basically have like 5 to 6 words that that baits people in, and then could also give value. And so we noticed that we have reoccurring themes of the titles that we use, because like there's only so many baity titles you can use with 5 to 6 words.
Yeah, shocking, amazing, whatever. Yeah, that makes sense. And I see that all the time. It's just so funny to me. I want to ask you this also. I focus my personal brand. I focus a lot on just where my audience is at. I don't leverage too much to TikTok, even though I've heard, obviously you want to, leverage it a little bit more so. And I also leverage a lot of YouTube because that's where my audience is at. And then LinkedIn is heavy. I don't leverage Instagram, mainly because my audience is not there, and mainly because most of my audience are, high 7-figure, 8-figure earners and founders and so forth, and that listen to this podcast. So with that being said, there are certain, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't want to have an omni-channel approach unless you obviously are able to, say, hey, there's a reason behind this. Do you focus on 1 or 2 and maximize those verticals first, and then you start gravitating toward that omni-channel approach? Or what's that evolution look like when you're working with clients?
Okay, well, this is amazing. I want to break down yours specifically. And so like, if you had to say like, what's your goal of what you're trying to get out of your social media presence? Like, why are you doing this podcast? What's the reasoning behind it?
I leverage it as a business development tool, actually, but also I leverage it because I do understand the content game. But instead of me having to do like a whole bunch of how-to videos and how to do this, I knew I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, let me interview amazing people, have amazing guests on, and then also it's kind of an omni. It's a double-edged sword where, hey, it's not only my audience but also your audience as well, and we're leveraging that platform. It is for brand awareness a little bit, but I'm not having anything to sell or anything. But it's just more of that's kind of the strategy, just to build a presence, just to build it.
Got it. So you knew that you wanted to do social media, but the podcast format was more authentic to the content that you would want to create rather than like the how-to videos, even though those could potentially perform better.
Yeah, they probably could, but I just knew, like, I just extrapolate that long enough. I knew I wasn't going to stay consistent with it. So I said, what was going to stay, and that's the way I think about a lot of things. What can I stay consistent? Because at the end of the day, consistency is key. So I was like, okay, this is one thing I know I can stay consistent with because it doesn't take a lot of my time, energy, and effort too much, but I'm also, I enjoy it. But Yeah, that's really what it comes down
Uh,
to. Look,
Dude,
go
the
ahead.
consistency is for sure. I want to ask one more question, and I can get into the omni channel. So like it's brand awareness, and you don't necessarily have anything to sell right now. And so, like, what's the end goal and purpose? Like, just to build as much brand awareness in the high level business community as possible.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I use the podcast as a business development. So on the back end, I work with a lot of family offices and investors, and it builds my ecosystem and Rolodex and network of individuals that I can work with and partner with and facilitate transactions. That's the ultimate goal, of course. Now, the reason why I want to build the presence is because obviously when you have 400, 500,000 subs or a lot of listeners and even more listeners, what happens is you can get bigger guests, which of course then facilitate bigger transactions as well. So that is the ultimate goal. The reason why I play the game isn't to sell, my audience stuff. It's more of to attract bigger business development individuals that I can work with and connect with as guests, and then do a bigger transaction on the back. So that's my master plan.
For sure, dude. So with what you're saying, it completely aligns with doing a podcast in terms of like the long-term goal, and you're connecting with other high-level individuals. They can share their audience, completely align with that. What you said in terms of building an audience around one particular platform, I'm in complete agreement with that, of focusing on one particular social media platform to grow your following first and seeing traction there, and really dialing in your content strategy with that one specific social media platform and then branching off. This is in particular with YouTube specifically, is that YouTube long form content and a long form strategy on YouTube is the number one hardest social media platform to grow a following on without any user base on any other social media platform. And so we actually get our clients, if they're wanting to build a YouTube for the long term, is we start with a YouTube short strategy on their YouTube account. I did this with my girlfriend too, where she was wanting to get into YouTube, and I said, listen, like, your content is great for shorts. She started up a channel. She didn't post a single long form video, just YouTube shorts, and she grew up above 20,000 subscribers in the matter of 3 months with a specific YouTube short strategy. And then she started posting long form content. And right from that, she had that initial base to get started off of. But she also only grew that initial base of YouTube because she had a TikTok and Instagram following as well.
Okay, so that's where the omni-channel approach, which makes perfect sense. And so let me ask you this also, because I got a lot of friends that have a YouTube, but also, and like I mentioned, they're in the investing world, and they start posting a lot of content on LinkedIn because it's professional, that's kind of their ecosystem. But like I mentioned, they're not really optimizing for like likes or whatever, or they're not like optimizing for, hey, there's a convention, and I'm speaking at this convention, you guys sign up, etc. Right? And correct me if I'm wrong, you want to have very clear KPIs and like what is a success, right? So when you're having a conversation, Luke, with your clients, what does that look like when you're focusing on one vertical, one social media, and saying, okay, hey, it's not about views, it's not about this. It is, we want to measure something, and that is determining, hey, is this strategy working? What does that look like? How do you unpack that?
For sure. In terms of the strategy working, it's all based off of engagement numbers over the course of a long period of time. We usually measure engagement numbers on 3-month intervals because it's too much variance in terms of doing month-to-month content unless the client is posting a lot of content on a monthly basis. So we usually do engagement levels every 3 months. And it really varies in terms of like, I can't really say a specific number KPI because it's custom to every single client, of like every 3 months we want to see the engagement double, because that's very different from a client who's starting from ground zero compared to a client who already has hundreds of thousands of followers on their social media platforms. But engagement is our number one KPI, and we do it on 3-month intervals.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
gotcha. When you're looking at some of these brands that I've seen some real estate people that just dominate in this, where they create amazing content, and their ultimate goal is to build them into their followers into a community of some sort. And then that community, whether it may be Slack, whatever, I've seen a lot of different kind of systems in that. Then that's where they start selling them other stuff, right? What do you find with like these individuals that, is it a call to, I know it's like you said, a call to action. What have you found is the most effective call to action? Again, I know it's very contextual to each client, but like I would imagine there's a pattern, like a very soft call to action, email, subscribe, whatever, like something that's very simple, low barrier to entry, but also very effective. What have you noticed as a consistent pattern?
Yeah, so this is actually a funny one. It might be contrary to some people's beliefs, but we get clients in the mindset, and we actually don't take clients who don't switch their mindset onto this. Is we get clients when they sign up to us in the mindset that they're not going to make money from this for the next 12 to 24 months. And so we set the precedent right at the beginning that there's going to be very little call to actions in order to bring revenue through the door in the first 12 to 24 months. And that's to set the foundation, just like you would in a business where if you're starting up a business from ground zero, you're not going to be expecting to take a ton of money from the profit in the first 12 to 24 months. You're reinvesting it back into the business. And so that's exactly what we're doing with the social media strategy, where we're reinvesting all of those call to actions back into their social media presence, where the call to actions are to follow them. The call to actions are to engage with the post, those types of things, where it's basically, in a sense, reinvesting back into their social media strategy, where it's growing their social media platform. Now, once they've gone to a level 12 to 24 months where it makes sense for them to start throwing call to actions in there and getting like a direct ROI from this, is we usually do a strategy of bringing people over to YouTube long form and marinating people in content. Again, it varies from product to product. We mainly work with like service-based businesses. And so this is where it makes the most sense. Coaches, ones that have service-based offerings. And we bring them over to a YouTube channel where they can marinate in the content, because once people are watching hours and hours of somebody's YouTube long-form content, they're fully bought in. They have full trust, rapport, fully bought in, and it's a closed deal when they get on the call.
Okay, I'm so glad you talked a little bit about the paradigm shift that they have to have and the long-term game. I've seen a lot of influencers that establish that. Pace Morby is one that just dominates in this regard. He's in the real estate world, but very good. Now I want to ask you also, okay, when you're looking at this stuff, okay, I find this so interesting in regards to like the content as well, and pushing this out. We understand that, makes sense, perfect, awesome. You say long-term game as well, which is fantastic in regards to the way you think about it. When you're working with your clients, and some of them have to kind of just adjust and modify. What I mean basically is the feedback loop, right? Identifying the analytics of the post, what's working, what's not, why did it, what hook was established, and then also as you start building a community, there you have to adjust to what your audience kind of wants a little bit as well. I want to talk a little bit about the analytics and the data of this content, because some things I'm going to be honest with you, Luke, when we push the shit out, I have no idea why some things go when some things don't. And I think this is going to be a huge and this thing over here. So just it blows my mind sometimes. And I may have this whole plan, but it just goes to boot. And I'm just like, okay, well, let's roll with whatever the data is telling us. So I want to talk a little bit about the data and the analytics of, hey, when you're looking at analyzing this, how are you guys looking at it? What timeline are you looking at it to determine and identifying those patterns?
For sure. And this goes into where the viewership numbers and the engagement levels don't lie. And so you can be biased in terms of the content that you're creating or the video that just got edited, and you're like, wow, this is going to perform amazing. And we've had this time and time again with my content, with our clients' content, where we're reviewing the video and we're like, this video is going to slap out of the park. It's very similar with direct ads on Facebook ads and Instagram ads. We get an ad extremely dialed in, spent a ton on production and get all dialed in. And then a video that we spent 10 times less time performs better. And we had no idea. And this is what I really like about social media, is that you're able to go through so many reiterations and go through so much testing so quickly. And it's not about, this is another mindset shift, is it's not about every single piece of content that goes out and gets posted, even if you're going for like a larger demographic, even if you're going for like Alex Hormozy level of getting very viral across a lot of different social media platforms. It's never about every single piece of content going out with the mindset of having it go viral. That's not the mindset that you want. The mindset is posting consistent quality content over an extremely long time horizon. And if you're posting extremely quality content that's giving value to the audience, real applicable value to the audience, and you are consistently doing it and consistently improving it over a long enough time, then it's inevitable to basically be increasing your engagement levels over time. The majority of people think, and the reason I can't give like an exact answer in terms of diving into the analytics and data is because it's so minuscule and it's not addressing the larger problem. And the larger problem is that people just aren't spending enough time over a long enough time horizon on their social media platforms, and they're expecting some overnight success, which just isn't realistic. And it's not necessarily about analyzing the analytics of every single video, and it's more about just continuing to post more quality content in your industry that's consistently giving value.
Okay, I was just curious because see, I do know like when we post stuff on LinkedIn, for example, I see, okay, when are we getting the most hits? When are we getting the most views? What caused this to kind of, establish? What day was this? At what time was that? And I kind of get really micro with it. And then I also, what was the content itself? We didn't include a link. We added some hashtags, whatever it was, so that it established. And then I noticed, okay, well, if I stay consistent with that, does this optimize, or are we noticing a up to the right trajectory? Is there consistent? Is there a pattern in that? And sometimes there is, sometimes there's not. And then also like with, YouTube shorts, just like you mentioned, YouTube shorts are really successful, and I'm doubling down on those as well to establish that. But, you just see if there's a pattern when you're looking at that data. I was just curious how much you get into it because, there's sometimes when you extrapolate this long enough and you got enough data and you got enough post out there, but I also understand it's very contextual, right? Because sometimes it may not be, I'm optimizing for a lot of views, a lot of clicks, whatever, but hey, this one post, this got a client, or maybe this got, an email subscriber. Hey, cool, wonderful. So you're optimizing sometimes for that. It may not get into, hundreds of millions of impressions, but maybe it got into 1,000 impressions, and like, that's all you need. Is that the best way to look at it there?
Yeah, so I get very minuscule and very data driven when we look at our direct ads. So when we're spending money on direct ads for Facebook ads, Instagram ads, TikTok ads are the ones we primarily use. Get very niche down in terms of this specific content. How many leads did it bring through the door? What are the impressions? What are the click-through rate based off of this exact video? And then analyzing it compared to all of the other pieces of content. How many comments did it get? What were the comments like? Very broken down. Because every single dollar that I'm spending, I'm trying to get $2 out of it plus type thing, because that piece of content, it only stays on Facebook for as long as we're paying for it. That's the whole methodology of direct ads, that you're paying for that piece of content to be shown for a specific period of time. But with social media, we look at things a bit differently in terms of it's on social media forever, and you can potentially repurpose that content in the future. And so sure, we look at like the engagement numbers overall going up as we're posting more and more content and as we're like changing up the hooks and stuff. But as you said, in terms of like sometimes the data shows something and then it shows something different. Perfect example of this is we do a lot of strategies where we post the same short form clip across all different social media platforms. We do this for my content specifically. Like you'll see the exact same videos go up on my TikTok, IG Reels, YouTube Shorts, and they all get completely different viewership. I had one YouTube short that got 3,000 views, and then it gets over 100,000 views on my TikTok. Completely different. And it's like, what's the reasoning for that? There could be an infinite amount of reasons, but if I just continue to make more and more quality content, giving value, and I know that I have my hook extremely good that's correlated to the caption, then there's only so many things that can change from that.
Okay, so do you A/B test that then? I mean, like say, okay, hey, I'm going to take the same video, but I have a different hook, or maybe like the different headline, if you will, go on Twitter, TikTok or Twitter or Instagram, and then you test those and see which one. or is it's really not an A/B format? It's not apples to apples because each one of those social media platforms, their algorithms totally drastically different. Their audience is totally drastically different. So you really can't compare apples to apples. Is that correct on how to look at that?
So we do A/B testing for the videos. Remember when I was talking about the videos that we spend a ton of time on just because we think that they're going to do well? So on the videos that we spend a normal amount of time on, where they're dedicated videos and we just really believe that they should be going viral, we sometimes do several reiterations and post them to see across several different platforms in terms of changing up all of the components of the video that aren't the actual filming. So if you look at the components of the video, that especially a short form video, we can get really micro with this, but you got the thumbnail. So like the quality of the thumbnail, how the thumbnail correlates with the hook of the video, and how the thumbnail correlates with the caption on the video. And then you have the first words on the screen in the first 1 to 2 seconds, which should correlate with the hook. And then it's like a double hook where it's the first words on the screen in the first 1 to 2 seconds, plus what you're saying there. And if all of those correlate together, and how that is in the client's, in the viewer's eyes. And then you have the background music on the specific video, and then you have how the outro finishes up in terms of like if it's enticing for the person to rewatch the video. And then you have there's several other components to it, but those are the main ones. And so we'll switch around those things. A main one that we switch around is the background music, to see if it does better, especially on like the ones that we spend more time on.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you're really getting everything, every detail, which is awesome. I figured you would, and that's why you guys are able to scale at the level you guys are at, which is awesome. I want to ask you also. I've had some individuals I've seen definitely in podcast world where it's very clean, maybe in the repurpose of their content. And then there's some that are like on LinkedIn or Instagram where they get a lot of their like and their username on all this stuff, and maybe their company name and their company logo. It's very busy in that piece of content or short form. And what is your opinion? And not opinion, I should say, it's more like the data. What does the data show? Is it more, hey, this short form, you want to obviously have your brand a little bit, because then that associates not only your face but also your brand, maybe add a little, but you also want to kind of keep it clean. I've seen some that are very clean, very driven, but also maybe have the wording itself branded with their colors, but there's also association, but it's not too busy. It doesn't have all their follow me on Instagram, and all these things. And I've just seen some that it's like I literally stopped watching it because it's too busy, in their content. It's got this and all this stuff and all this, all around it. And I'm talking about video. I'm talking about short form. I'm also talking about Instagram. I'm talking about LinkedIn on their post. So what have you noticed in regards to the data or the patterns that you're noticing in regards to getting the most engagement or views, or, just the best response from that?
For sure. With this, in terms of unpacking it, it's heavily geared towards in terms of the audience that you're trying to go after, where like different audiences watch content differently. And so that's one thing, is that once you have identified the audience that you're trying to target and the exact content that you're creating, that also helps with the type of content that you're going to be editing and the format you're going to be using to edit those videos afterwards. If you're going for a very professional audience, very high level audience, you don't, those people would tend to have a longer attention span than a high school kid and a broader audience. And so you could get away with not cutting out as much content in terms of making it as fast paced as possible and not making the hook as clickbaity, or you can get away with a lot more stuff, but then you're not going to be going over a broader audience. And since you're not going for a broader audience, then you might be missing on a huge crowd of your target audience because it's never being shown to them across the social media platforms. And so for the majority of people that are going for a broader audience and going for that virality component, it's definitely about making it as fast paced as possible with no blank space and giving value as quickly as possible. And so what we do is like we cut out words from this. If I was editing the short form content, every single time I stutter or use the word like or use a filler word, that's all getting cut out. It's never being used in a short form piece of content, and it's to consolidate the content as quickly down as possible. In terms of what you were saying as brand colors and stuff, that should be consistent no matter what audience you're going after and what social media platform you're on. Your brand colors should always be consistent and a representation of your brand. The fonts that you use should be consistent throughout. All of those major key factors of your brand's foundations should be consistent across all of your social media content, no matter what.
So, okay, so you with the data, it's really dependent upon the audience. So you don't see that as like an AB, you don't see that as a hindrance to the engagement of it. Because at the end of the day, this piece of content may have all the little, diagram, all the little, brand and all that stuff and all the titles on it, but it's really effective for their audience, and that's fine because the engagement's still long and people are engaging with that. So that's not really a factor. Okay, I was just curious on that because
if people are putting ads and stuff and making their videos way overcomplicated, it's for sure going to hinder their engagement. 1000%. Like the clean perspective is for sure way better. Now, if they have their own data for their specific niche audience that it's improving their engagement levels, they should roll with it. Like this is something in business too, where sure there's specific sets of rules in order to succeed in business, broad overviews that are consistent across every single industry. But there's stuff that go against the rules in very specific industries, and that's the same with social media.
Okay, so I want to ask you this also. There are certain I should say hidden secrets, but there are certain hidden tactics that some of the top brands, and you're very familiar with this, leverage that other people just don't. And what I mean by it, it's not as easy as just repurposing content. Like you mentioned, it has to be quality, but it also has to be a sexy hook. And I've noticed, and just personally, whenever I do a controversial thing, when or something to go against, and I know you're kind of diving into this a little bit as well, in controversy and Gen Z and so forth, which is really cool. You go against the grain, but you notice it also increases your engagement of some sort. Now, it may not be attracting the right audience, so you have to put that into context. But I'm curious sometimes when and then also I understand like YouTube, every 10 seconds you have to adjust the video, or you have to, make it closer, or adjust that's why you see a lot of these podcasts have 4 or 5 cameras, because they're adjusting it according, and every 10 seconds they're it's a live feed. So, and they do that. Why? Because it increases engagement, and they see that and they know that. And again, it's not like a secret tactic, but it is a very effective tactic. And so I'm just curious also in regards to like some of the way you approach this stuff. You can't, it's in today's evolution of content, and because you are fighting against everybody else out there, you really have to be entertaining, you have to be engaging, and you have to really grab people's attention in the first 3 or 4 seconds. Otherwise you lose them. And that's just the name of the game right now. And so what are you noticing that is very effective? You obviously mentioned quality, but that can really grab people's attention so that later on the 13th, 14th month, like you mentioned, long term, now they start seeing the fruit of all their labor that they established for the first, building that foundation in the first 12 months.
So the biggest thing in terms of grabbing somebody's attention is something that inflicts a strong emotional reaction to the person. And so if you reverse engineer that with your content, if you're giving a piece of value on a particular subject, then you have to see what is the best way that I could phrase the opening line to this piece of value that will inflict a strong emotional reaction from the person. Most of the time you'll find that it's in a negative light, where you're inflicting a negative emotional reaction. And this is where we get into the topic of controversy. And it's funny that we talk about this, because I've actually been nailing down on my team over the past, when we've been getting on social media calls for myself, is like, I'm like, guys, I'm fine with being controversial. I'm wanting to get more controversial topics out there, because I do want to get to like Alex Hormozi level in the future in terms of stuff with that. And Alex Hormozi, even himself, he puts out very controversial stuff with that. And so one technique in terms of that's being utilized by our team in order to create this is we actually use AI and ChatGPT particularly to our advantage when creating these hooks. Because if you think about it, it's really a numbers game of how many you're able to to go through about a particular topic and then review. And so ChatGPT has unlimited. If you use ChatGPT 4, and eventually when ChatGPT 5 comes out at the end of this year, it's going to be ridiculous. But if you use ChatGPT 4, you can get ChatGPT to write up 100 different headline hooks for a social media piece of content for a particular topic. And then you can review all of those and just say it out loud. And you would, the majority of people, like, you don't have to be a social media expert to understand what would inflict the strongest emotional reaction from somebody, like what inflicts the strongest emotional reaction from you. And so if you just understand that, then that's what it is. But yeah, that's what we do. We use ChatGPT for building out a large component of all the scripts that we use. And then we basically figure out the best combination of the hook and the value pieces, put them together, and then build it out completely.
So then coming into this a little bit, because I know it's effective, it works, but I think also some business, and I've literally have talked to some, founders and some individuals that are personal brand. It's like they don't want to be too controversial because they don't want to align themselves with the, with their brand, right? However, though, it's like you just mentioned, it's a give and take, right? In order to get in order to establish a controversy, and establish a strong emotional response from your audience, then it will create a massive engagement. However, if you just say, hey, be happy and joyful and all that, hoo-ha stuff, then you most likely won't get as much engagement or much as result. And that's kind of proven, correct? I mean, that's from the data. I mean, it's just we're human nature. For some reason, we just love to attract toward negativity, man. So is that correct in regards to the way you approach it?
1000%. And I think that people who are listening to this might get the wrong interpretation of controversy, where another way to put this that's more lighthearted is the aspect of whatever you do, whether you sell a product or you're a service-based business, or maybe you're an author to some books, whatever that is, you can think of it as the pain points that your audience has. And so for every service that you have, or every product, you have a list of pain points that product or services. Like, that's the reason you have value in the marketplace. And if you are 7, 8, 9 figures, that means you have product market fit and you've sold a lot of this. And so that pain is in the marketplace. And so that's really what we dive in on, especially with business brands, but also with personal brands, where they go off of topics from like what their industry specific knowledge is. And it's breaking apart what are the major pain points that their product or service solves for. And then really diving deep into each one of those pain points and creating content around each one of those. And it's fairly easy once you have all the pain points listed out to create the topics around those, and then to create the headlines as well.
Okay, gotcha. I want to also ask you, and kind of coming back around to the content itself. I've seen, Alex Hormozi, Grant Cardone does this, Pace Morby does this. A lot of these influencers, where it's more like in the life of, or the day of, Pace Morby or whatever. What does that look like, right? And someone's following him around it. Gary Vee does this a lot, where they just put random stuff and he's going from speaking engagement, and it's just more of just this almost docu-series, if you will, or just, this kind of their life or whatever. I would imagine there's phases, right? There's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So after the 12 months of how-to content, of very dialed in, very niche specific, hey, are we talking to our avatar, unpacking what you just mentioned earlier on, and what is our strategy, what is our tactic, what is our implementation strategy? Once you start staying consistent for 12 months, then there's a 13th, 14th, 15th month where you start seeing the fruits of your labor, right? And now it's like, okay, now we got a huge community. What that looks like, maybe it's a smaller community, I don't know, but the reality is a community, it's effective. Now we can start upselling them. Now we can add value to them, and maybe have some sort of call to action. So I want to talk a little bit further down the road here. What do you find is a good next step, or a good community base, or building that next phase, if you will, to say, okay, hey, now we can start implementing this other stuff that you want to do? Because right now you have to cater to your audience, you have to track your audience, and that's the mission, that's the goal for 12 months. Then once you establish it, now you can start getting a little bit more creative and getting outside the box a little bit.
Dude, this is sick. So once you get to the part of where you've built the foundation, you get into an atmosphere where there are so many things that come from having a substantial social media and digital brand that you don't even take into account, much more than just like nailing down the specific, like what are the call to actions that we can start implementing. And here are some of the things that people don't really consider about building a massive digital brand, and specifically on social media, is that it helps for recruiting purposes. This is something that no business owner thinks of, is that when you're recruiting top level talent into your business, which is the biggest driving factor of getting to that next level, they're looking you up on Google, they're looking you up on your social media presence to see the company and the vision that they're going to be working towards. And so it not only increases the amount of leads, so to speak, of people who want to join your team coming in, where you start getting Instagram DMs, start getting more emails of people being like, I want to join your team. That's what we've seen just from our own brand, but also like the companies that we do social media work for. But then it also helps with the process of you're able to increase your interview timeline, because these people who are wanting to join your team are really wanting to join your team. You have a moat in the marketplace where you have a substantial brand that every single person wants to work for. When people work for you, they want to show off the brand that they're working for, and they do that when the digital presence is in place. The second thing with social media and having an elite digital presence, just like without the call to action aspect of things, like once you've gone to like an extremely strong foundation, it increases the ROI of every single other component of marketing that you're doing. So if you have word of mouth, if you have direct advertising, if you have an outbound sales funnel with like calling or emailing, all of those leads now that are coming into your pipeline, they're searching you up on social media and on Google before making a purchasing decision. There's stats out there that over 80% of consumers search your name up on Google before making a purchasing decision. And so you have that now where it's increasing the ROI of all of your other efforts. And then you have things where people are reaching out to you to join podcasts, which is an opportunity for you to show your brand more content, which is a compounding effect, and then also able for you to potentially do a call to action for whatever service you're wanting. And so in terms of this goes on where there's like an infinite amount of benefits of building a social media and digital presence, more than just like fitting in call to actions in terms of your social media content. But once you get to a certain point, yes, you can start having more authority to put link in your bio of your specific product or service and directing people towards that. But the supplementary benefits from social media, once you have that foundation, is much more, in my opinion, than anything that any call to actions in your videos could perform.
Yeah, what's so interesting is I see a lot of these influencers that have just mega presence, and even a micro influencers. Mr. Beast is a really good example, and the reason why is, I mentioned this because he's very well known, or whatever. But when he adds another product line of anything, now all of a sudden it's another $10 million, $50 million business very quickly and efficiently, because he's already built that ecosystem. And a lot of people understand that in the community and the presence, but also just the brand awareness. You think about, Michael Jordan, I think, is a very good example of how he connected with himself with a brand. He was a personal brand himself, really well established, and then all of a sudden connect with a brand, and obviously, split the profits with whatever was sold through that, vertical. That's the same thing now that we have access democratized to us, and that's why you're seeing so much. Now, I'm curious, okay, because I was thinking about this as you were talking about this. How much do you analyze your competition, right? Where you see other individuals, you see their niche, you see, okay, I'm kind of going after, and it's not like you're competing against them, because you have your own personality, you have your own way of doing things. So it's not like a direct competition, but you do see, okay, hey, there are, successfully excludes. You are seeing someone that's in your vertical, in your niche, that they are doing successful. And it's like, okay, well, we don't want to copy them, but we do want to obviously learn from them. Analyzing what they're doing, what they're working on, and how to obviously differentiate yourself from that. So when you're starting out, not only the 12-month campaign, but also like the 13th and 14th month, the next level, whatever, analyzing that and saying, okay, how analyzing your competition. How much do you guys get into that? And not only how much, but it's like, how do you guys think about that? What are you looking for to say, okay, hey, this is what we could also leverage, depending upon, again, their metrics, their goals, leveraging social media.
For sure. Dude, I hope people are watching this or listening to this right now because this is going to be really good. But I'll break down the first 12 months and how we do this. And then after the 12 months, especially in the first 12 months, there's so much social media content that's out there. And there's so many people who are already in your industry that have gone through the trials of creating so much content that you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel at this point. And what we do with a lot of the social media strategies that we build out for clients in a particular industry that are just starting out in the 0 to 12 month range is we go onto the short form content platforms, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, look at industry leaders in their specific demographic. So search them up on TikTok, or you could just search up the hashtag in their specific industry. And then what we do is we put together a list of all of the most viral pieces of content from other industry leaders, content creators that are similar to them. So similar to them, similar to the audience that they're going after. And we put together a list of all of the highest performing videos. That's in terms of likes, views, and overall engagement. And then once we have that list, we basically we realize a lot of similarities between them. Again, there's similarities with like the hooks being used. There's similarity with the types of value being given, and you're able to draw all those similarities. So we're able to create a lot of content directly from that. But then we're also on certain pieces of content, we're able to repurpose exactly what they did, just in our client's own words and in our client's own, like basically brand image and like what they specifically want to say, and building an entire script basically off of what's already being done. And we find that it's very helpful for getting some viral videos right off the bat. And it's something that's very powerful in terms of at the beginning stages, where when a client sees a viral video happen in the first 3 months, it's not even about the viral video. It's about the commitment that it gives to them, where it's a flip that switch, where it's the mindset thing of bringing them to the 12 to 24 months time horizon, where if they see the viral video, they're like, wow, this is getting traction so fast. And so it like gets that buy-in of getting them to that level. It's not even about if it brings a ton of following in or gets them to that next level, because it usually doesn't. And that's why it's not about just having that one hit wonder viral video. It's about posting consistent quality content on a long enough time horizon. And then once we get to the 13-month plus mark, we don't normally completely copy other people's content. We find that we want to be creating our own brand image. And so what we normally do is we're constantly still looking at people in the industry, but more seeing like what their overall strategy is like, what their overall brand image is like, and comparing ours with them.
See, this is why, for those that are listening, I just want to foot stop on your strategy again, because it's so data driven. It's not just this, shoot in the dark and, let's hope and let's guess, right? And man, it's not working, right? We're pushing out a lot of content. And I see a lot of personal brands, definitely in the financial world, because it's where, investors and so forth, but they're trying to build it and they're pushing out a lot of stuff, but they don't have any data driven focus. And I think it's just so, again, Luke, I appreciate you explaining that. You don't just create content just for the sake of it. You're analyzing other people that are doing that in regards to your approach, and then saying, okay, this is what's working in the industry. Let's go ahead and leverage some of the patterns, the knowledge. And then you're leveraging a lot of your strategy on data that's already proven, right? And again, there's phases to that, of course, and the evolution of that. And I think that's just, it's just really awesome in your approach. Luke, I want to just talk a little bit about your business. You're a very young guy, and you have led an incredible business. And I want to talk a little bit about just the way you lead and some of the things that you're doing creatively, building a culture to build to high level talent, and then attracting high level clients as well, right? Being able to not have to work with the 90%, 99%, but focusing on that 1% of business owners and entrepreneurs, those higher level individuals. What were the pivotal moments that helped you lead to the business? And I'm not going to mention the top line, but you guys are doing very, very well in the top line revenue. So I just want to share that. You don't have to mention the number, but I mean, the next 5 years, you talk to me offline, very exciting stuff, and where you guys are trajectory, and you guys are going to be able to hit that because, there's just a lot of excitement. You guys have some incredible results. So I just want to foot stop on that. But I want to ask you, as a young leader, what you did in regards to culture, as well as making sure that your product and the way you find your clients, how those have been able to be aligned so well and established, and what was the evolution of that?
For sure. There's a lot to unpack here. So, um, biggest thing in terms of the development of our product is I'm a product person and I wasn't a salesperson at heart. And so the entire time of our business, I never focused on sales. And so over the past 7 years, I've only been focused on dialing in our product and then eventually hiring the right people to service that product to the specific clients, and then nailing down the specific clients that we work best with. One thing that we've done recently is we've definitely, myself and my leadership team have realized that the power of focus in just every single area. So the power of focus in terms of the exact service that you're offering, and the power of focus of which client avatar is best to receive that specific service. And one thing that we did is we did the 80-20 principle, where we collected all of our clients over the past 7 years, broke down their exact professions and their industries, and then figured out the top 20% of clients that paid us the most over the past 7 years. And then we've nailed down on that's our exact client avatar that we're going to be servicing. And then we broke that down even further in terms of, in that top 20%, what were the exact packages that we offered them, which was a bit difficult to analyze because all of our products are fairly custom. All of our services have been fairly custom over the past several years. And so that was a bit more difficult, but that was a huge component of things. In terms of the biggest driving factor that has gotten us up to the level that we're at now was definitely building out our sales team, because we spent so long building our service. And it was only really my two brothers that were working on sales pretty much entirely for our business. And so we were capped out because two people can only bring in so much revenue for the business, even though we had a really good service and we had a good strategy of what we did is all of our clients, when my two brothers were the main salespeople, is they were all coming in through Instagram DMs. And so we had 2 years of 5 million in revenue, 2 years in a row of just selling Instagram DMs, and just with my two brothers managing it. But then it was majorly capped out, and we had to build a sales team. And so that's helped tremendously in terms of bringing in consistent revenue, and then being able to build out other things where we've had more funnels of email marketing, direct advertising and stuff. And something that I've switched into heavily that we can talk about that's been quite difficult is switching from actually doing a lot of the work to not doing any of the work, and just figuring out ways to hold people accountable and really lead people and motivate people, and seeing all of the things behind that.
Yeah, and I think it's just so cool. I appreciate it because I've talked to a lot of individuals that have, scaled and exited, billion-dollar companies, and just the evolution of product market fit, just what you mentioned, what you did. And I appreciate you kind of diving into it. You had some clients, but then you started realizing who were your best clients, and then analyzing that data and say, what were the packages? And obviously it took probably a little while to be able to identify that. But once you did, now all your marketing, all your front end stuff and acquisition level to, hey, this is who we are, and got, like you just mentioned, focused and disciplined. And I'm curious, with the clients that you did have that were in the sub 80%, right? What was the evolution of slowly exiting them out of your business so that your team wasn't taking a lot of time, energy, and effort? Because a lot of business owners, they'll identify and say, well, my team is spending a lot of their time, energy, and effort on these low 80%. When the reality is the top 20%, they're more profitable and they don't take as much time and energy because they're just easier to work with because they just get it. And so I'm curious, what was the exit strategy for some of those clients?
For sure. And this has kind of been difficult for me throughout the entire time of it, because it goes back to a trait that I've had kind of the entire time through business, and I constantly try and overcome, which is the aspect of greed. And I noticed that a lot of things boil down to the aspect of greed, and a lot of the biggest mistakes that I've had in the past is based off of greed. But if you boil down in terms of why you wouldn't go after your top 20% of clients, when I reverse engineer my thinking of like, why wouldn't I make this decision, this concrete transition? It boils down to, because I want my sales team to be able to close as many clients as possible that are coming through the pipeline. And I don't want them to be turning away a ton of clients, which in a result is just me being greedy and wanting to have more clients come through, even though we know the specific client we're going after can be fulfilled better. And sure, we'll have way less clients overall, but we'll be more profitable, and each one of those clients will have a higher LTV in the long term. And so what I notice is most of the things with this is getting over mindset barriers. And it sounds like it sounds cliche to say, but it's getting over those mindset barriers to just whatever your thinking is capable of. But it in direct response, in terms of what you said about what actual steps have we taken to get rid of the 80%, it's just over time, as their clients finished up their packages, we basically stop servicing them, finish up their package, wrap it up, and then we don't resell them or upsell them, and we focus on just the higher level clients and continue on a monthly basis with them.
Yeah, I mean, I had a friend of mine that asked me, how do we decrease churn? Well, just get better clients, and then all of a sudden they want to stay with you. You know, I mean, it's a very simple process, but it's an evolution. I love what you said. It's you're skating to where the puck is going. Luke, man, I know we could talk for an hour, and this could be a Joe Rogan experience, but Luke, I really appreciate you being on here and just unpacking your wisdom, man, and higher level stuff. The way you very, very data driven, analytical, the way you approach things, the way your team is able to establish a 12-month plan to be able to really get the foundation and the compounding effect working for them, and really making sure that these individuals, these personal brands, these amazing individuals that have scaled amazing businesses, have very technical approaches in regards to their KPIs and the metrics with their business, but they have no technical approach with their social media. And maybe they do have just a lot of content that repurposing, but the way you guys are able to, establish a ticket and make it very effective and engaging. And there's a lot that goes into it. It's a whole different game, and you have to play it. And obviously, Luke, you have been able to dominate that because you work with a lot of brands. For those that want to reach out to you, my man, that want to obviously connect, that want to learn a little bit more and talk to one of your team members, how do they reach out to you, my man?
Christian, I appreciate it, man. This is an awesome podcast. If anybody wants to reach out, they can either go to our main company website, HighKeyAgency.com. That's HighKey agency.com, or like my Instagram DMs are open on Instagram at Luke Lintz. I respond to every single DM. So yeah, feel free to reach out at Luke Lintz, LukeLintz.
Awesome. And guys, just make it very simple. I will put all those links in the description so you can reach out to them, connect with them, and DM them. Guys, that is my friend, the CEO of HighKey Enterprise, the one and only Luke Lintz. Guys, that is Journey with Christian Evans podcast. Until next time, be uncommon if you can.